Today, we're taking a look at the L400, a mini tower case from a relatively unknown company called Shiny Snake. Yeah, that's really their name. It's compact, well built, and has a clean, modern aesthetic, but also makes some very questionable design choices that may doom it to obscurity. If you're into small form factor builds that ride the line between clever and frustrating, this one's worth sticking around for. Hey guys, CJ here with Elevated Systems, and this is the Shiny Snake L400, a vertical sandwich style mini ITX case that fits right in with options like the Corsair 2000D, the Fractal Mood, or Cooler Master and Core 100. Stylistically, it looks like a smaller, less agile Meshroom S, and just like its inspiration, it comes with a few quirks. Today, I'll walk you through the specs and features and overall build quality. I'll drop in a test system to see what the actual building experience is like and how it holds up thermally. And as always, I'll wrap things up with my take on whether the L400 is worth considering for your next Mini ITX project. The Shiny Snake L400 is a 12.1 liter vertical ITX chassis measuring 198 by 169 by 363 millimeters. On the left side, you've got mounting for Mini ITX motherboards with CPU coolers up to 73 millimeters and full-size ATX power supplies up to 160 millimeters long. A PCIe 4.0 riser cable is included, allowing you to vertically mount up to a triple slot 350 millimeter long GPU on the right side. While the case doesn't come with any fans out of the box, it does support up to 3 slim 15 millimeter 120 or 140 millimeter fans, 2 in the front and 1 up top, all mounted via removable brackets. There's zero support for liquid cooling and no mounting points for 3.5 or 2.5 inch drives. So yeah, this thing expects all your storage to live on the motherboard. Welcome to 2025. The front I/O is tucked along the bottom edge, clearly signaling that this case is meant to live on your desk, not hiding out underneath it. You get an LED ring power button, 2 5 gigabit per second Type A ports, a 10 gigabit per second Type C port, and a combo audio jack. Build quality is actually pretty solid. The core spine along with the rear and bottom panels is made from sturdy 2mm steel. The mesh panels are 1mm perforated steel, and the base, including the feet and I/O assembly, is molded from solid ABS plastic. The side panels are mechanically fastened with 3 screws, and I noticed the case uses almost no rivets. It's practically all screws, which makes disassembly and potential mods way easier, and that's always a win in my book. As far as the build experience goes, let's start with the fans. Only 15mm slim fans physically fit inside this case. Removing 4 screws lets you pop out each fan bracket, and I mounted an Arctic P12 Slim to each one, but I quickly learned the bottom front fan interfered with my ability to install a 160mm long ATX power supply, so that fan had to go, leaving me with just the top front and top fans for this build. The only way you're getting that bottom fan in is by switching to an SFX power supply. Installing a Mini ITX board was also a tight squeeze. In hindsight, it would have been smarter to install the board before mounting the fan. I did end up having to pull the front fan back out just to make enough room to get in there and plug in all the cables. That said, I was able to reinstall the fan afterward and keep it clear of all the cables and wires. Installing the graphics card was relatively painless. I removed the bottom PCI bracket cover, routed the riser cable over to the right side, plugged in the card, secured the riser to the chassis, then mounted the GPU to the bottom PCIe slots and replaced the cover. To finish off the build, I tucked and strapped down the excess cables wherever I could find space. Like most small form factor builds, this one takes a bit more time and planning, but I still managed to get it done quickly and relatively cleanly. Again, going with an SFX PSU would have made cable management way easier. Now, speaking of cables, there's only about 2 centimeters of clearance between the GPU display outputs and your desk surface. So yeah, plugging anything into the GPU is a bit of a nightmare. Shiny Snake does include a 90-degree DisplayPort cable, which technically works, sort of. I couldn't get it fully seated into the rearmost or top display outputs because the connector was just a bit too long and hit the plastic base of the case. I kind of plugged in, but not flush, which isn't ideal. With a little bit of filing on the case base, I could probably make it work fine. But for this review, I'm calling the first DisplayPort inaccessible. And if you try to use any of the other outputs, the 90-degree connector blocks the port directly below it. So out of the box and without any modding, you're really only getting 2 usable ports out of a 4-port graphics card. Now guys, if you appreciate independent, ad-free, and sponsor-free reviews like this one, consider subscribing to the channel. It helps me keep creating honest, in-depth content without the outside pressure or paid talking points. Now, with my test system installed and the panel secured, it was time to check thermal performance. I compared the temps of the same components in the same configuration on an open-air test bench versus inside the case during a 30-minute gaming session. The results were mixed. Inside the case, the average peak CPU temperature rose by just 3.5 degrees Celsius, and that's pretty average for a small form factor chassis. But the GPU, that spiked by 10 degrees Celsius, which is the worst I've seen in any case I've tested as far as I can recall. And 10 degrees isn't just a number, it's enough to drop the GPU's max boost clock tables by over 100 megahertz. There are a few reasons for this. First, on my PowerColor Red Devil test card, the first 2 fans below straight through the heatsink directly into the PCB, with air escaping out the sides and back, or bottom of the card in this case. Unfortunately, this case only provides about 2 centimeters of clearance below the GPU and just 14 millimeters of clearance for air to escape. That hot air really has nowhere to go. It reflects off the surface below and gets recirculated right back up into the card. The third fan on the GPU is a blow-through design, but the back of the card is basically kissing the rear of the motherboard, so that exhaust path is totally blocked, and yeah, that probably doesn't help CPU temps either. The 2 slim case fans just can't generate enough airflow to keep up with the heat. I tried every fan orientation, both exhaust, both intake, front exhaust with top intake, top exhaust with front intake, you name it. The best configuration ended up being both fans as exhaust, but even then the differences were minor, just 1 to 1.5 degrees between all the different variations. Now, I did try a little DIY fix. Since my Red Devil is a 2-slot card, I added 20 millimeter standoffs to the PCIe riser mount. That pushed the card 2 centimeters further away from the motherboard and gave the blow-through fan some breathing room, and it brought the GPU fans closer to the mesh side panel and even covered that open third PCIe slot, helping to block some of the reflected hot air from recirculating. It also aligned the GPU's rear exhaust with the bottom edge of the case, giving that trapped heat a better escape route. The results were a 3 degrees Celsius drop in GPU temps under load. Not amazing, but it helped. That small reduction was enough to minimize the impact on boost clocks. For reference, the Corsair 2000D I tested, GPU temps were about a 6 degree raise versus 7 with my little mod. Now, I really wanted to test a triple slot card to see if having those fans pressed right against the mesh side panel would help, but the only one I have is actually a chunky 3.4 slot card, and it's too wide to fit. And best guess, a true 3-slot card would probably perform somewhere in between. Better airflow from the mesh side, but still limited by tight spacing up against that motherboard. As for noise, the system and fans I used are super quiet even under load. That said, since the L400 is basically all mesh, there's nothing really to dampen sound, so noise levels are entirely dependent on the components you choose. So wrapping things up, there's actually a lot to like about the Shiny Snake L400. The build quality is excellent across the board, and aesthetically, it's a clean, modern design that wouldn't look out of place on any desk setup. If you've been eyeing something like the Mushroom S but want a smaller footprint, this case checks a lot of the same boxes aesthetically. For a small form factor case, the L400 is surprisingly easy to work in. The all screw assembly makes disassembly and modding a breeze, and there's room for full length triple slot GPUs without having to shell out extra cash for an SFX power supply, and that's sometimes a rare combo. But cooling is where the L400 stumbles. Despite being a 12-liter chassis, fan support is severely limited. There's no room for liquid cooling, and even air cooling feels compromised, especially on the GPU side. And while double-sided tape is always an option, the complete lack of built-in storage mounts is going to be a turnoff for some builders. At the end of the day, the L400 is kind of a niche option. It's a great choice if you want that sandwich-style vertical ITX layout with a smaller overall footprint, and you're okay sacrificing some thermal headroom for that aesthetic. But if thermals are your top priority for your next build, this probably isn't the case for you. So that's the Shiny Snake L400. It's a compact, solidly built, and definitely has its place, but it's not without its flaws. If you found this review helpful and want to support more independent, sponsor-free content like this, consider subscribing to the channel. It really does make a difference. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.